I'm Hallie, and tonight rescuers cannot even get to where they need to do the rescuing because of how intense Hurricane Fiona has been. Now passing over the Dominican Republic after just pounding Puerto Rico. Tons of rain. Winds whipping 90 miles an hour in the DR, all of it triggering mudslides, wiping out highways and trees and power lines. You see people walking around looking at the damage there. You've got nearly 1 million people who don't have running water there, hundreds already in shelters. And then in Puerto Rico, you've got the governor saying the damage is catastrophic. Most people do not have power. 2,000 of them aren't even in their own homes. They can't be. And look at some of this video of just the power of the storm ripping up pieces of pavement. 30 inches of rain fell in some places. Look at this. The water levels rising, in some places ripping roofs right off buildings. And check this out. There were about 1,000 rescues today. This is one of them. But this is also the crisis now, because a lot of the island is not even accessible for rescuers to find the other people who actually still need help. Puerto Rico is getting a ton of rain still, with first responders scrambling to get there. Hundreds are already on the ground, but officials say it could take several days to turn the power back on. And listen, you've got to remember the backdrop to all of it. 5 years ago tomorrow, okay, Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, September 20th, 2017. And even after all this time, the island is still recovering from that storm. Nearly 4,000 houses have a blue tarp even now where there should be a roof. And the former head of FEMA says the flooding from Fiona is going to be worse than what it was from Maria, which was mostly a windstorm. We've got it covered from every angle tonight. George Solis is in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and Bill Cairns is tracking the storm. George, I want to start with you. Take us right to where you are on the ground.
Yeah, Hallie, the images are truly heartbreaking. The people of Puerto Rico so resilient, but you have to wonder how they are getting through with the emotional toll this storm has taken. Hurricane Fiona barreling through this island, knocking out the power grid. Many wondering how this storm would fare just as a tropical storm. Here it is as a hurricane, and it has decimated so many homes and businesses, people who have already endured the worst. As you mentioned, tomorrow, the eve of Hurricane Maria, and this right here adding insult to injury. This just a slice of some of the destruction. We know people that have had to relocate because the damage is so severe. And as you mentioned, some areas we can't even really assess yet because of the flood waters that are occurring. I talked to a native Puerto Rican who experienced this storm. Listen to what she had to tell me about the dramatic images she saw. So you experienced Hurricane Fiona. Tell me, what was that like?
Was no joke. Was no joke.
Why?
You know, I felt winds. It started literally getting a little bit windy, a little bit rainy. A lot of noise. I've never heard such.
Yeah, and the threat of this storm clearly not even over yet. Yes, it's moving away. There's no more hurricane warning, but we're still dealing and potentially enduring more rain, which is the last thing Puerto Rico needs right now. Hallie?
You talk about the last thing Puerto Rico needs. The last thing Puerto Rico needed was another huge hurricane, right? And I mean, I think about Hurricane Maria, and I know you remember the coverage. It was so visceral. People living a nightmare for years really, truly have not fully recovered. And I have to imagine that is simply adding to the stress and anxiety that would come to something like Hurricane Fiona already.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And earlier I talked to a number of people who were questioning if they had been prepared for this storm. Many figured maybe they would lose power. Many were skeptical at first, some fearing that this is the exact same thing that they would have to endure, right? A power grid that was already frail being battered by yet another storm. And now officials struggling to answer when they might actually get power back online. Some suggesting it could take a few days, maybe a few weeks, depending on the municipality and where they can actually assess some of the damage. The government saying right now they are more so in response mode than recovery. So people maybe have a reason to be skeptical. And right now they are just awaiting for that federal aid to get on the ground here to begin assessing some of the damage. Hallie?
Let's talk about the federal piece of it, because President Biden is on Air Force One right now, heading back, of course, from the services for the Queen overseas in London. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he has now called from the plane the governor of Puerto Rico. We're literally finding that out as we are on the air with you here tonight, George. We know the conversation is going to turn to federal help, and it's going to turn to accountability here, okay? Because there are people who are still struck by what happened last time around. One person telling the New York Times, I think the government minimized what was going to happen. I found that it was a hurricane just at 11 a.m. yesterday, so I left everything and ran to the grocery store. Basically, people saying they weren't prepared, they weren't ready for what was to come.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And as I mentioned, a lot of people were initially skeptical that the government had prepared for this storm. And again, they were thinking that this was going to be a tropical storm that blew through, and then they got the hurricane, the power grid out. So now they're hearing it might take days. They're trying to find answers. They want to know how much sooner they're going to have to wait, especially when you're talking about not just power, you're also talking about water, you're also talking about cell phone service. And again, the people have lost homes, they have lost businesses, so they really don't have much time to wait. And we did get word that the FEMA administrator is going to come to Puerto Rico to begin assessing some of the damage. And right now, this island needs all the help that it can get because, frankly, they definitely cannot endure another hit like this. Hallie?
George Solis, I'm glad to have you on the ground there. I know you will continue to do reporting from there for the days to come, and it will be days, if not weeks. I want to bring in Bill Cairns now for more on this storm. It is now heading toward Turks and Caicos, heading toward Bermuda. And the key thing to me on this is the climate crisis connection, Bill, which is this is dropping so much rain. It's not just the wind. Hurricane Maria, it was the wind. Hurricane Fiona, it's the water. And that's a huge factor here.
Fiona has produced more rainfall in Puerto Rico than Maria. So that's why you can't compare two storms. Every storm is different. And a study that was done just last year said that, the hurricanes now, because of climate change, warmer oceans, higher humidity levels in the atmosphere can hold more water, that these hurricanes are producing about 5 to 10% more rain than they should be. So there's your climate connection to this. So we just got the new update from the National Hurricane Center. Category 2 now. It actually didn't even weaken over the Dominican Republic, which is very unusual because of the mountainous terrain. But it went over areas near Punta Cana. Still a little bit of rain in Puerto Rico. Let's take you through the projected path that we just got in. It looks like it's going to go just east of the Turks and Caicos, so a glancing blow for that island area and the resort areas there. Then it becomes a Category 4 possibly as we go through Wednesday, and then our eyes are on Bermuda. As of now, the red line is the center line. Bermuda is still in the cone of uncertainty, but a Category 3 major hurricane will be very close to Bermuda as we go throughout Thursday evening. And then this could be the big event. I mean, this damage that we may get in the Canadian Maritimes may rival what we're dealing with in Puerto Rico. We're looking at the possibility of a Category 3 storm turning into what we call an extratropical, large, huge ocean storm, with winds possibly up to 100, 120 miles per hour, high tide, flooding, storm surge, all the way through possibly Nova Scotia or Newfoundland in Canada. They do get hit by storms about once every 3 or 4 years, but this could be one of the strongest ever, and that's between Halifax and St. John. Somewhere in there is where we're going to deal with this storm, and all of our computer models right now are taking it up here in this region. This would be Saturday, Hallie, so this storm's not done.
You answered my question, which is the most dangerous part of this storm over, or is there more to come? And it sounds like there is certainly more to come. Bill Cairns, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, it's not positive. I mean, what happened in Puerto Rico is already done. All that damage is done. Bermuda is going to be a close call. But what happens in the Maritimes, yes, it could be just as bad.
It's Bill Cairns. So glad to have you there monitoring all of it for us. Thank you so much. 7.6 magnitude earthquake has hit off the southwestern coast of Mexico. This is happening just late this afternoon. We know now that it was deadly. At least one person has died. There are tsunami warnings. You're looking at a map here. This is, again, the central part of the country. There was a national earthquake simulation today. It just so happened in Mexico that added to the chaos. That is in part because September 19th, today, has been a date where Mexico has seen terrible and destructive earthquakes in the past. I want to bring in Guad Venegas, who is following this for us from our Miami bureau. Bring us up to speed on what we should know here, Guad.
Hallie, September 19th for Mexicans has been a tragic date. Well, because of those earthquakes in the past, Mexico had a drill today, a simulation to test the earthquake alarms for everyone in Mexico City. After they tested the alarms, then they had this real earthquake. So we know that it was a 7.6 magnitude in the coast and the state of Michoacan. This is just northwest of Mexico City. As of now, most of the damage to structures is in the city of Manzanillo. That's just north of Michoacan in the state of Colima. That's where one person did die outside a shopping center. There's also a lot of damage to some of the buildings in the city of Manzanillo. The president has said that the military is evaluating other damage in other parts of Mexico. And of course, for the people in the country, again, on September 19th, they register this earthquake that we know at least one person has died. So it's been just a tragic date for Mexicans, Hallie.
And help us understand this. There was like a drill kind of, right? And then this earthquake hit, and it felt like this earth, just even looking at some of the user-generated content, or at least the stuff on social media, it felt like it was going on for a little bit.
Right. So one of the things that Mexico has made use of is the alarms. Mexico City, especially a city of millions, has the earthquake alarms that they often test to make sure that people can hear these. Sometimes these alarms use trackers that are located near the ocean or parts where a lot of these earthquakes will originate. So there's seconds for people to run out of the building. So that's why they test these alarms. So today they had this earthquake drill to test the alarms and also to commemorate, of course, September 19th, the date when they had those terrible earthquakes in 2017, in 1985. And it was after that simulation that we had the earthquake really take place. Now, I've been on the phone with people in Mexico. I have family in Mexico who were near the area, people in Jalisco who told me it felt like a whole minute. It was a very long earthquake. In fact, I spoke to a relative who was in California for a lot of the earthquakes in the 90s, and I was told it was just a lot longer than the earthquakes they were used to feeling. It was very bad, but fortunately in that part of Mexico, like in others in Jalisco, it was just a terrible minute, but they haven't seen any damage. As of now, it's the city of Manzanillo where we have seen some of the images with damages and where the person did die, Hallie.
And I imagine we will be seeing more from that area in the days and in the weeks to come. Guad Venegas, thank you. We're glad that your family in Mexico, of course, is okay. Thanks, Guad. It has been an evening of breaking news, folks, and we have more of it because right as we were coming on the air, something happened up in Baltimore, something big. A judge there vacated the murder conviction of Adnan Syed, meaning he is out of prison while prosecutors look into new evidence. He'll be under home detention. They're trying to figure out whether to drop murder charges against him. I want to remind you, this is somebody whose name has been made famous from the Serial podcast. Did you listen to it? Huge, right? Huge podcast, tons of people, tons of followers, and he is the person at the center of it. I want to show you the reaction outside court when this news was announced. Okay, so you heard the cheers there, and I know it was tricky to see, but the guy in the white shirt coming out, that's him, that's Syed. He'd been in prison for more than 20 years, convicted of strangling his ex-girlfriend, Heyman Lee, back in 1999. Syed has always said he's innocent. In court today, Lee's brother got emotional, saying the situation is like living through a nightmare again. A lawyer for the family says they just want justice. Danny Savalos is joining us now. And Danny, this is a significant moment that we had a bit of a hint was coming because prosecutors last week filed a motion saying that an investigation with the defense uncovered new evidence about two other people, including somebody who allegedly said he would make Lee disappear. Talk about this and how this came to be.
Astonishing, because if true, this is classic Brady evidence. Brady evidence, the Brady rule requires that prosecutors must disclose potentially exculpatory, in other words, evidence that tends to show a defendant's innocence. And if they failed to do that knowingly, that's a real problem. And once prosecutors discovered this, they should have immediately moved to vacate. What astonishes me is that this is not a case that has flown under the radar and only recently got some attention. So who went through the file folder and only just discovered that you had issues with, first, potential DNA testing, 2, Brady violations in that there were other suspects, 2, and 3, the cell tower location information, which at the time, the state of the art, the state of the technology, was nothing like it is today. So why now, and why did the prosecutors decide that now they would file a motion to vacate the sentence?
Do they have to answer that question at some point to someone?
No, and that's my theory. You're going to get an exclusive from just me on this. This is what I think will happen. The prosecutors were very careful in their wording. And you saw that they moved to vacate the conviction because of procedural irregularities. But they made a big show of saying, we don't think he's innocent necessarily. Now, they have 30 days in which to decide whether or not to retry the case. My theory is they will quietly go off into the sunset. Why? Because of what's called wrongful conviction statutes. Maryland just enacted one. And one of the things you almost always need in states that have wrongful conviction conviction statutes is actual innocence. If you win on a technicality or because of juror misconduct or anything that's inconsistent with innocence, then you don't get compensated. I hate to be jaded here, Hallie, but I think the reason the state moved the way they did was to avoid hitting the state up with a multi-million-dollar compensation tab when Adnan Syed almost certainly will eventually go after the state for incarcerating him for over 2 decades.
And to be clear, this, as you point out, the prosecution made a point of it doesn't mean right now that he's innocent, but just that he can stay home. He's no longer behind bars while this investigation happens. Do you think that there was a fame factor, quote unquote, in this, Danny? In other words, because this was a case that was made so popular on Serial, that had something to do with the extra scrutiny, with the extra eyeballs here?
Absolutely. And this is a well-known fact among people who are currently sitting in prison. They know that if they can get attention for their case, it substantially increases the chances that they might be exonerated or even beat their case somehow. So it's not uncommon for folks who are incarcerated to try to get not only lawyers to volunteer to their cause, but media attention, because they know, they all know that if they get enough eyes on their case, you might get some internet sleuths out there, whoever, you have a shot. And people who are incarcerated are eternal optimists. They always think they've got a shot. For every Adnan Syed, there are thousands of people who think they are the next Adnan Syed. And statistically, sorry to say, they are not.
Well, let me just tell folks, if you are a Serial listener, if you listen to that podcast, they're going to have a new episode out tomorrow morning about Adnan Syed. I bet a lot of folks will be listening. Danny Savalos, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us. To San Diego now, where a military trial started today for sailor Ryan Mays. Prosecutors say he's responsible for starting the fire that destroyed the USS Bonham Richard Navy ship. Now, he says he's innocent. He's pleading not guilty today. And he also chose to give up his right to trial by jury. He's going to be tried by a military judge instead. Do you remember when this happened? Look at this. You probably do. It was a huge deal. It was a couple years ago, tons of smoke. Rescuers were trying to put out this fire at a $1.2 billion ship. It was totally destroyed, and Mays was charged on a couple of counts, including arson, with the fire burning for something like 5 days. Other sailors who were on that ship have said they saw him going into a lower area where investigators say the fire started right before this happened. You also have a Navy report last year finding the fire could have been preventable and that there were lapses in training and coordination. Mays could be looking at life in prison if he's convicted. We'll follow that. Right now, we're also waiting on a ruling from a judge in Indiana who's hearing arguments today on that state's abortion ban. And by the way, it's a ban that's already in effect. It's been in effect since last week. The law makes abortion illegal in most cases unless the life of the woman is at risk, if there are any fetal abnormalities, or in cases of rape or incest. So from a place like Indianapolis, women who would like an abortion have to drive now to get care to a place like Dayton, Ohio, where abortion is available up to 20 weeks as of now, or that have to head to Champaign, Illinois. Look at the map here, about 2 hours away from Indianapolis. Remember, this is the state where the abortion ban passed after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. Maggie Vespa is joining us now. So, Maggie, no ruling yet today, but the fact that these arguments were even heard still has some significance, right?
It definitely does, especially for, as you know, women in that state or people in that state who want to fight this law, which, as you said, went into effect, I think, about 4 days ago at this point. So the fact that these arguments have now made their way in front of a judge is really big. Just at the core of this case, by the way, this was filed by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, and they're arguing in this lawsuit that Indiana's ban, which, again, is a near total ban on abortion with minimal exceptions for things like rape and incest, they say that violates a woman's right or a person's right to privacy, which is guaranteed in Indiana's Constitution. That being said, as you said, we're waiting on this ruling. We don't know how this judge is going to decide. She said that she hopes to issue her ruling, the word she used was expeditiously, so soon, but that's subjective. And all the while, again, nothing has changed on the ground in Indiana. This law remains in effect. So a lot of women there, doctors already saying, leaving the state to access their abortions. A lot of them, as you pointed out, coming here to Illinois, Hallie.
Maggie Vespa, live for us here, watching that story. Maggie, thank you. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, Dr. Fauci today warning about new COVID variants right after President Biden saying the pandemic is over. So how are we supposed to make sense of all this? We'll break it down just ahead. And a California woman who faked her own kidnapping in 2016, she has finally been sentenced. How much time Sherry Papini is getting? One of our 5 things coming up. Ever wondered what it sounds like when a meteoroid hits Mars? Well, now we know. We're going to play you the audio in just a couple of minutes. But first, Dr. Anthony Fauci is warning today we may see another COVID variant pop up this fall. And it comes as President Biden is doing something that not even the CDC has done yet. He's going out on national TV and saying the pandemic is over. Biden administration is still working to get Congress to approve something like $22 billion to keep fighting the pandemic for stuff like tests and COVID shots and treatments. And here's why. The numbers show COVID is still a very real thing in this country. 60,000 people getting infected every day, 500 people dying every day from the virus. But is it still a pandemic? I want to bring in Dr. Akshay Syed to talk about all of this. Dr. Syed, good to see you again. You know, President Biden says the pandemic is over. The World Health Organization says the end of the pandemic phase is in sight. What do we have to do to get to the point where everybody agrees, yes, it is no longer a pandemic, it's officially something else?
Well, thanks, Hallie. And you know, I'll say when President Biden, when we first heard he said this last night, a lot of us here in the medical unit at NBC kind of did a double take. I don't think a lot of us were expecting him to say that. Like you said, we're still seeing about 500 deaths a day, at least in this country alone. And, you know, times 7 days a week, that's about 3,000 deaths a week from COVID-19. But it's important to keep in mind here, what a pandemic really is when you have an outbreak of disease that's spread over large areas or regions globally. And what we're seeing right now is it's still very much an issue, not only here, but everywhere else. So I think right now it's a little bit too early to say it's over, and I think the WHO is going to be looking for those death counts to come down even further.
Is it a disconnect to you that the president on the one hand says the pandemic is over while acknowledging COVID is still here, as on the other hand his administration is pushing for more money to fight COVID because they're making the argument this thing's sticking around?
Well, I think two things can be true here, right? We can still be in a pandemic, but this virus is not the same threat that it used to be. And so I think the thing that's going to be really interesting to watch is when it comes time to renew those emergency relief or get funding for the things that you mentioned, how do his comments from last night play into him asking for those things in the future?
What should we know, right? Like, so, okay, fine. Things are going to go down in Washington. And yes, I live in Washington, so I extra special care about what's happening in Washington. But I also care, I think, like a lot of people, it's fall. My kid's back in school. A lot of people's kids are either back to school, maybe they're returning to the office, et cetera. Over the last couple of years, we've seen infection rates go up at this time. More people are inside, so on and so forth. Should we be taking booster shots now? Is the guidance changing? When should we be doing that? What should we know?
Yeah, well, Hallie, I'll tell you what I tell my patients. And to keep it simple, it's if you are 3 to 6 months out from either an infection or your last booster, I do think you should get boosted. And, you know, the reason is we finally have a booster that's updated to the most recent virus. And being sick is just not fun. Let's admit it. So, you know, the hope is that this booster shot that we're all getting matches the current strain and can prevent infection in the first place.
Dr. Akshay Syed, thank you so much. It's good to see you. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Thanks. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, President Biden says U.S. forces would defend Taiwan against a Chinese attack. That statement in a 60 Minutes interview is at least the 4th time this year that the president has made a comment that seems to change U.S. policy on Taiwan, which, of course, is a self-ruled island. After this aired, a White House spokesperson doing a bit of cleanup said, wait a second, the U.S. policy is still the same. In response, China is saying the president's comments sent a seriously wrong signal to people who want to see an independent Taiwan. Number 2, Navy veteran Mark Frerichs is free after 2.5 years of being held in Afghanistan. The Taliban released the American engineer who was taken in Kabul in 2020 in a prisoner swap that was personally approved, apparently, by President Biden, according to a senior administration official. In exchange, the president agreed to commute the sentence of an Afghan drug lord who'd spent 17 years in custody by the U.S. after being convicted of heroin smuggling. Number 3, the seismometer on NASA's InSight lander picked up vibrations from meteors hitting Mars for the first time. So if you're like, okay, so what? It means we can kind of hear what it sounds like when something hits Mars. Turn up your volume. Listen. Can we just have some real talk? I don't know that that sounds that dramatic, but it's interesting, right? NASA says it left a huge crater in Mars, it exploded into big shards, etc. The actual impact happened last year, but we're just now getting to hear it today. Number 4, Sherry Papini, the California woman who faked her own kidnapping in 2016. She has been sentenced to 18 months in prison. She pleaded guilty in April to mail fraud and lying to a law enforcement officer. Papini initially told police that 2 Hispanic women had abducted her. Prosecutors had asked her to be sentenced to 8 months, so that sentence is obviously longer than what they asked for. Number 5, in India, cheetahs making a comeback 7 decades after they died out there. 8 of them are back. They arrived in the country over the weekend and will live in a national park. The Indian Prime Minister, celebrating his 72nd birthday, was there to welcome them. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Southeast Bureau, people in Jackson, Mississippi, have now filed a class action lawsuit against the city, against its current mayor, former mayors, people and companies who worked on the city's water system. Remember, there had been a boil water advisory in place for weeks there because of problems at the city's main facility. The people bringing this new lawsuit want money. They want pipes. They want contaminated equipment to be replaced. From our Midwest Bureau, take a look at this video. It shows rapper Post Malone falling into a hole on stage. Ready? Oof. This was during a performance over the weekend. So you might be thinking, why is there a hole on stage? Obviously, he's not in great shape. It's a trap door. It's used to move equipment on and off the stage. He bruised his ribs, but his manager says he was able to finish the show, and he says he's going to keep touring. Now, with in-depth reporting tonight on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And this one comes from California, which as of now will allow a new eco-friendly burial method called human composting, starting in 2027. The bill was just signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom over the weekend, and it is a process, human composting, where your deceased loved one is turned into healthy soil. Companies that offer this say every person who chooses this option over more traditional methods like burial or cremation will save 1 metric ton of carbon from entering the environment. It can cost around $5,000 to $7,000. That's a little less expensive than a casket funeral, but it's more expensive than cremation. California is not the first state to be doing this. Washington, Colorado, Oregon, and Vermont now allow human composting. NBC's Kristen Dahlgren has a closer look.
Trina Ballard Southern lost her mother, Leanne, just 1 month ago.
She was modest and warm, thoughtful and practical.
One silver lining during this difficult time was their certainty around the funeral.
This is exactly who she was and what she would have chosen.
They decided on what's called terramation, also known as human composting. Instead of the traditional burial, the human body is composted and turned into soil, which is then given back to the family for future use.
There is something in us that wants to return to the earth.
Micah Truman is the founder of a Seattle-based funeral home called Return Home, one of a few places in the U.S. offering this option. The process involves organic material and oxygen. The bottom of a specially designed vessel is lined with sawdust, alfalfa, and straw. Then the body is placed inside, dressed with a compostable gown. The vessel is then filled to the top with more organic material and sealed.
The oxygen flows through the vessel and takes the body up to temperature. And in 30 days, the body completely transforms into soil.
Recompose, another Seattle-based funeral home, integrates families however they choose.
Maybe you want to say prayers, sing a song, anoint your person. That's what this room is for.
And ceremonies can be personalized for all religions and belief systems. At the end of the process, families are given the remaining soil. Cremation, according to Environmental Advocates New York, uses about 28 gallons of fuel and releases 540 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere per body.
Terramation takes about 90% less energy to complete, and when we're done, we have a material, soil, that can then be used to restart the cycle of life.
But not everyone is on board with this kind of legislation. The Catholic Church, for example, opposes it. The New York State Catholic Conference saying in a statement in part, a process whereby human remains are composted and scattered in a designated scattering garden or area in a cemetery fails to sufficiently respect the dignity due the deceased. Trina said she's found comfort in the terramation process and believes that through this option, her mother's legacy of caring for the environment can live on.
This is Leanne, how she would choose for herself and others, to be mindful of the footprint that she left. And I'm hoping that this will be more widely practiced, that people will see that it's a really beautiful option with a lovely result at the end. That's my hope.
Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
New Yorkers may also be able to compost their loved ones' remains soon. The state legislature just passed a bill that would allow for human composting, adding it to a list now, New York, of only a handful of other states that have voted to legalize this option. The bill has not yet been sent to the New York governor's desk. No word on whether she'll sign it. We'll keep you updated. Still to come here on the show. It looks like book bans and challenges in school libraries are going nowhere. In fact, they're surging. The titles people are targeting and the consequences one group is warning about. Coming up next. The push to ban certain books from school libraries is on track to hit another record high this year, the most ever after last year getting the most ever then, right? This is according to a couple of new reports, including from PEN America, a group that says it advocates for free expression. They say about 1,600 books were banned across the country during this past school year. And for context, compared to like 2018 to 2020, there were only a few hundred. So this is a lot. This is a spike, right? This is objectively a spike. Why? It is part of this broader culture war we talk about a lot that's seen parents and teachers and school officials and students and politicians fight over how teachers should educate about race and racism, American history, and LGBTQ+ issues. Rahema Ellis is joining us now. And for the second year in a row, Rahema, we know that the most challenged book is called Genderqueer, according to PEN America. They're warning about what the consequences are down the road, especially with a lot of this centering around LGBTQ+ themes.
Yeah, for sure. We should point out that book banning really is not new, but what people say is what's happening now is different because they saw before. A parent might see their kid reading a book and have questions about it. They would go to the administration, raise those questions, and there would be a discussion. But those groups now that are about free speech say this rush and this push to ban books is taking on a completely different approach. Take a listen.
One is political pressure emanating from elected officials. The second is local groups organizing and advocating for the censorship of specific book titles.
And as you pointed out, Hallie, they find that the books that are being targeted are those that mention LGBTQ community issues, as well as those that talk about race and racism. And the other thing that they point out is it's important to remember that these are not books that are in the curriculum. We're talking about, as you said, books that might be in the library or even books that are on a school book club list that some people object to kids reading in their free time. Hallie?
What are literary groups trying to do about this, Rahema? You make the important point this isn't necessarily new, but it is different. So how are they handling it?
One of the things is by putting out reports that they put out today to say, take a look at what's happening here. People may not be aware. If you don't have kids in school, if you're not paying attention to some of these education issues, this may be something that's just going under the radar. So these groups are trying to say, this is something that is happening. You need to pay attention to it. Also pay attention to the consequences, they say. Students who find themselves pictured in some of these books that are banned now feel, they say, are coming under feelings of depression, being left out, having a sense of lower self-esteem. And that's not something that they want to see the kids have. We reached out to some of these groups that are pro-banning some books. They haven't gotten back to us with any comment. Hallie?
This has taken on political overtones, as you well know. Hundreds of laws have been proposed to ban books. Dozens of those bills have then become actual law, but not all these challenges are so formal, right? I mean, some of this is not going through the sort of law or political process.
That is the big thing that many of them are saying, that it's not the normal process. In fact, they're saying what they see is people just taking catchwords, catchphrases, not even reading the books, but banning them or requesting that they be banned outright by the mere mention of a name. And therefore, this process is not going through the typical review process, but is being something that's spurred on by emotion or maybe something that's incorrect because they haven't read it, they haven't reviewed the books. Hallie?
Rahema Ellis, thank you very much for bringing us that reporting. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. We'll have more for you here tomorrow, same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.